AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios.
Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Senators Ted Cruz and Rick Scott have a good piece in the Wall Street Journal, the editorial page, just documenting the Biden-Harris years by the numbers. Per the Biden-Harris inflation, a new car today costs $47,870 versus $40,857 in January of 2021, $7,000 increase, or 17%. The interest rate on an average new car today is more than 8%, compared with about 5% in January of 21, increasing the cost of a 5-year lease, or 5-year loan, I should say, by $726 a year. The average auto insurance policy costs $1,500 and change in 21. By the end of 24, it's going to hit almost $2,500, two-thirds increase. A year's worth of gasoline that cost $9.95 in 2021 now runs $12.81. The home ownership, the average home cost $304,000 rounding in January of 2021. In August, the cost was $416,000.
Holy cow!
But with mortgage rates recently at almost 6.5% versus a little under 3% in January of 2021, the total cost of buying and financing a home has more than doubled, from just under $15,000 a year to just over $31,000 a year. And homeowners insurance is up, and the electric bill is up. These are all. Yeah, these are all
Insurance.
Significant double-digit increases, and people are feeling it. Thus, 80% of the country thinks the country's on the wrong track, which makes it pretty difficult sledding for the incumbent and the incumbent party, it would seem. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by the deputy editorial page editor of the aforesaid Wall Street Journal. Dan Henninger joins us. Dan, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you guys.
There's always a lot of issues that inform people's votes and their assessment of their political leadership. But it seems to me, after all of the bluster across all of the various issues, boy, this one is just something that Kamala and company cannot extricate themselves from.
No, I think you're exactly right. And that's what the voters will be focusing on. I mean, we've gotten down to the end of this campaign, and the last period, I think, it's been striking. It's been a wholly negative campaign by the candidates, just basically a mammoth exercise in subtraction, unprecedented ad hominem attacks on both sides. It's become extremely personal. And to the extent people are still paying attention, it's been wearing. There's a comment you hear all the time is, I cannot wait until it's over. All that said, at the end of the day, people, the left, liberal commentators attack Trump as a fascist, and by implication that anyone who votes for Trump is somehow complicit in Trump's personality and fascism. The fact is, in the last election, over 70 million people voted for Donald Trump, and millions will vote for Kamala Harris. Those votes are made on complex personal calculations of how people see their own self-interest. And in this election, I think it's exactly as you just described it, Dan. It's about the fact that prices are high, and they affect everyone, household prices. And that is fatal for an incumbency. The prices went up during Joe Biden's administration, in large part because of the spending. And I think it's almost impossible for Kamala Harris to dig herself out from under that. In addition to the ones you were just describing, I heard about one the other day. People are receiving letters from Medicare, which is increasing its premiums this year by about 9 or 10%. This is on retired people. So those prices across the board are just weighing on the vote. And I think ultimately it's going to bring Kamala Harris down.
Yeah, and I mean, and her closing argument, to the extent that she's making arguments, I mean, I get there's ad hominem invective that goes both directions, but Trump's closing argument, though, is coming out through it pretty clearly, which is, and it's a simple one. Things were better when I was president, and things will be better if you make me president again. Hers is Trump is Hitler. I think that, the advantage goes to Trump with that.
Yeah, I do. And it was driven home for me about a week ago when Harris was having a campaign in Georgia, and the featured guest was Barack Obama. Now, Harris has had a lot of celebrities appearing on her behalf, right? Not just Obama, but Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Springsteen, Spike Lee, Tyler Perry, Michelle Obama.
John Legend.
And
don't forget about Lizzo. Please don't forget about
Lizzo.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
About Lizzo. Yeah,
please.
And Megan Traylor, who was grinding or whatever.
But I watched Obama, and he gave a stem winder. It was vintage Barack Obama, dropping his G's, pausing for effect. And, what came across is he remains a very charismatic politician. He won election to the presidency twice. Then she comes on, and it was impossible not to conclude that somehow Kamala Harris does not have that magic element that you need to be a successful presidential candidate. There is a huge, I think, enthusiasm gap for Kamala Harris inside her own party. Otherwise, she wouldn't need to be rolling out one charismatic celebrity after another to compensate. And I just don't think it's going to be enough for her to put it across the line. She just doesn't generate enthusiasm, and that translates into turnout.
So you're confident Trump's going to win in less than a week from today?
My gut is that Trump is going to win, Amy. Donald Trump, let's make no mistake about it, rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Let us not forget that during the Republican presidential primaries, when Nikki Haley was getting about 20% of the vote in places like New Hampshire, a lot of those Haley voters said they would not vote for Trump. A question now is whether all these months later they still feel that way or whether they'll leave the presidential line blank. That one is hard to predict. I think for all the reasons we've been discussing, Trump should win this one. I think he probably should win virtually all of the swing states. But because of Trump's basically anti-politic personality, you have to just put an asterisk next to it.
Well, and in those swing states, you wrote about this. He's running a little bit ahead in most of the states, swing states, in terms of those competitive Senate races that pick up opportunities for Republicans in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Nevada, if he continues rolling downhill, which it seems like he is doing right now, then you could see a big night for Republicans in the House and Senate too.
Yeah, I think that's right. What has happened in places like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin with the two incumbents, Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, is absolutely fascinating. You simply cannot discount the reality of them incorporating Donald Trump into their ads. There is absolutely no way whatsoever that they would ever think of doing any such thing unless they recognized they were in trouble. I saw an ad here the other night in New York for a candidate who came on whose name was Laura Gillen. And as I watched it, I said, gee, I didn't recognize her. I wonder what Republican seat she's running for in Congress. It turns out she's the Democrat running against the Republican. She sounded exactly like a Republican on immigration and inflation and the rest of it. The wind is clearly blowing to the right or to the center right, and it does look as though there's going to be a significant number of Republican pickups in the Senate for that reason. A lot of these incumbent Democrats, they're running like Democratic senators. They're careful. They are members of the Senate club, and that can be fatal for Senate incumbents. That's the way Tammy Baldwin's been running, Bob Casey, and they're running against dynamic Republican candidates. Dave McCormick in Pennsylvania, Eric Holdy in Wisconsin, Bernie Moreno in Ohio. They're running good campaigns, and I think it's going to be a pretty good night for them, which would be good for the country.
Do you worry? You know, I know these can be treated as one-offs, but they're still of concern. Nevada Supreme Court saying non-postmarked ballots can be counted up to 3 days after the election. You have a voter fraud investigation going on, criminal investigation going on in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. That's an important county. You saw the ballot boxes in Washington State and Portland being burned. You know, the prospect, you know, when you see these stories and some judicial decisions, if those states turn out to be close and those and the outcome hangs in the balance, I mean that is a very concerning powder keg that might be getting lit.
There's no question about it. One of the conventional wisdoms that has emerged towards the end of the campaign, a lot of commentators have written it, is that despite all of the intensity, American institutions will survive and they can handle it. By and large, I agree with that, but for the reasons you described, Dan, one has to wonder. This is a very troubling development. Both sides, the Democrats, the Democrats and the Republicans are employing thousands of lawyers to litigate the election if necessary, and it can make Bush v. Gore look like a day in the park.
And just going back to sort of where if what we both believe will happen happens. What do the Democrats do if they get smoked electorally and with respect to pickups in the Senate and the House? Because Rui Teixeira, who writes at the Liberal Patriot, this former academic, and he's been warning his party about this for months, maybe years now too, about these unpopular policies that they just continued with despite the market feedback they were getting from voters, like with respect to borders, like with respect to profligate spending and the impact on prices. It doesn't seem to me like there's any, other than people fighting for their own survival, some of those Senate candidates you mentioned in the very short term, it doesn't seem to me like that party is ready for a course correction. He argues that the progressive moment is over, but I think the leftists in charge of that party beg to differ.
Yeah, that's right. If they do get wiped out, and they may, they really have to go back to the drawing board and reconsider all of these issues. Who's an interesting character at the center of it, Dan, is Senator Bernie Sanders. At the end of the campaign, he has been criticizing Kamala Harris for spending too much time with Lynn Cheney and attracting Republicans and not enough time appealing to the working man. And while it is true that the party is controlled by the left, and there is a lot about the left that needs to be reconsidered, Bernie is basically an economic populist. He hasn't really associated himself with the crazy wokeness and progressivism that I think is indeed fading in popularity, as Teixeira suggests. And Bernie, can't imagine him running for president again, but I think he's in a position to be an arbiter over a party that has to somehow appeal to the working man, but at the same time offload some of the craziest ideas that they've been pushing lately on equity, gender, justice, and climate.
Dan Henninger, deputy editor of the Wall Street Journal's editorial page, his latest column, Democrats Run a Bait and Switch in the 2024 Senate elections. Check it out. Dan, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
All right. Good to talk to you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Following is a paid political announcement.
Family, country, community. Ed Soliday has spent his life in service to others. A graduate of Valparaiso High School, Ed Soliday went on to attend Indiana University and served our country in the Army, where he earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. After his military service, Ed Soliday built a successful